Imagine a childhood toy you once loved. Over time it broke and you replaced its parts one by one. Years later, none of the original pieces remain. So is it still the same toy? Or is it something else entirely? This is the core of the Ship of Theseus Paradox, but now let's take it deeper. What does it mean for something to exist? If identity is tied to continuity, at what point does a thing cease to be what it was? And more importantly, what does this say about you? Let's explore how metaphysics, the branch of philosophy concerned with reality, existence, and identity, approaches this mind-bending paradox. At its core, metaphysics asks a fundamental question. What does it mean for something to persist? There are two major ways to look at this. Material persistence, the idea that an object remains the same if it retains its original physical components. Continuity of form and function, the idea that an object remains the same if its structure, purpose, and identity remain intact, even if its parts change. The Ship of Theseus challenges both of these ideas. If all the parts are replaced, is it still the same ship? If you took all the old parts and rebuilt another ship, which one is the real Ship of Theseus? The same applies to you. If every cell in your body is replaced over time, are you still the same person? Or are you just an ongoing process rather than a fixed identity? Plato's theory of forms. Plato argued that objects in the physical world are just imperfect copies of ideal, unchanging forms that exist beyond space and time. According to this view, the true Ship of Theseus isn't its physical form. It's the perfect idea of the ship that exists beyond physical reality. Heraclitus's Philosophy of Flux. Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." According to him, everything is constantly changing. The ship isn't the same because nothing ever truly stays the same. If we apply these ideas to you, Plato would argue that there is a higher, unchanging essence of you that persists, even as your physical form changes. Meanwhile, Heraclitus would argue that you are never the same person from one moment to the next, only a flowing, ever-changing process. Which view makes more sense to you? Metaphysics also offers two competing ideas about what objects and people really are. Substance theory. This view argues that objects and people have an underlying essence that makes them what they are, beyond just their physical parts. Bundle theory. This view, supported by the philosopher David Hume, argues that objects and people are just collections of properties with no underlying essence. A person isn't one thing, but rather a bundle of experiences, memories, and traits, always changing. If substance theory is correct, then the Ship of Theseus has a true essence that remains, regardless of its parts. If bundle theory is correct, then there is no real ship, just a collection of changing parts that we mentally label as one thing. So what about you? Are you a single, unchanging essence? Or are you just a collection of ever-changing thoughts, memories, and biological processes? Modern physics has entered the conversation as well. Quantum mechanics suggests that reality isn't as solid as we think. Particles exist in multiple states at once until observed, leading to mind-bending implications for identity. For example, the famous Schrödinger's cat thought experiment suggests that an object can be in two contradictory states at the same time. Could the Ship of Theseus and you exist in multiple states of identity, depending on perspective? If reality itself isn't as definite as we assume, then perhaps the question of whether the ship, or you, remains the same is the wrong question to ask altogether. What this means for you, the freedom to redefine identity. The metaphysical perspective of the Ship of Theseus Paradox leads to a liberating realization. Identity isn't fixed, it's fluid. If there is no permanent, unchanging essence to anything, then you are not bound by past versions of yourself. The person you were yesterday is different from the person you are today, and that's okay. Change is not loss, it's evolution. Just as the ship doesn't disappear when it changes, neither do you. You are a process, not a fixed thing. You define what remains you. If identity is a construct, Then you get to decide what parts of yourself remain core and what parts you wish to change. In a way, this paradox is freeing. You are not the mistakes of your past. You are not trapped by outdated beliefs. You are not limited by who you used to be. You are always in the process of becoming. If identity is fluid, then who are you? Are you the sum of your memories, your thoughts, or something beyond all of that? Here's a challenge. Think of a major belief or habit you had 5 years ago that you no longer hold. If your past self and present self think differently, then which version is the real you? What do you think? Do you believe identity is fixed or ever-changing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. In the next video, we'll dive even deeper into the ethical implications of the Ship of Theseus Paradox. If identity is fluid, then what does that mean for morality, responsibility, and personal growth? Click here to continue this mind-expanding journey.